Hi, welcome to Grammar with Clarity for everyone. This is our 11th lesson. We're still working with commas, and this lesson is going to focus on when do we use commas when we're using direct address and with introductory elements. So in this one, we only need a college ruled line paper, a sharpened pencil, and a sharpened green colored pencil. Okay, let's get started. All right, this is our 11th lesson. So we'll put this here, and then we're going to title this commas, direct address, and introductory elements. And notice how I'm putting this up here just because I want them both to fit up in this top border spot. Okay, now when we're talking about nouns of direct address, we literally call that indirect address. And you might be thinking, what on earth are you talking about here? Well, if I said, so my son's name is Cole. If I said, Cole, can you please come here? I am directly addressing Cole. So it's when a person's name is used, or even it could be a pet name for them. Like if I said, son, I told you to please come here. I'm still directly addressing him, even though I didn't use his name. If I use the word son. Okay, so here is the rule. The rule is quite simple. Always set off. To set off means to use commas, okay? Set off a noun of direct address from the rest of the sentence. Okay, so here's an example. Sure, Josh, you can stay later. Okay. Sure, Josh, you can stay later. It seems a little bit awkward to write that, doesn't it? Because we want to have a pause there. Sure, Josh, you can stay later. We need to have that pause. We're directly addressing Josh. And if Josh's name comes, or the noun comes in between other words in your sentence, it has to be set off, meaning that those commas have to completely isolate it from the rest of the sentence, okay? And then could we read the sentence without it? Yes, sure, comma, you can stay later. But when we include the name, we have to have that comma before and the comma after, okay? And so let's go ahead and underline the name. And then let's draw an arrow down from that. And we're going to write directly addressing Josh using his name. Okay, and that is all for that one. That's a pretty simple one. Okay, then the next part of this is going to be after introductory phrases and clauses. So let's go ahead and put that heading. Okay. So the thing about introductory phrases and clauses is that if they're lengthy, we need to separate them from the rest of the sentence. If they're very brief, we don't need to. So we're going to do an example of a lengthy one and an example of a brief one or a short one. And that's it. It's pretty simple. Okay, so for the example we're going to write is, determined to finish by the weekend, my husband worked very late nights on the yard. Okay, so where would it make sense to put the comma here? Well, it could be very helpful if we try to figure out what is our independent clause. So my husband worked very late nights on the yard. That is definitely the independent clause. The introductory phrase here, determined to finish by the weekend. So we're wondering who was determined to finish by the weekend, right? And so we cannot call this a clause. It's not a dependent clause, right? Because we're missing the subject. We have a predicate, but we're missing the subject. So it's not that. So we're not writing a complex sentence here. Instead, this is an introductory phrase, determined to finish by the weekend. So after that phrase, we want to pop that comma in there. And then when we read it, it makes more sense. Determined to finish by the weekend, my husband worked very late nights on the yard. Okay, let's go ahead and underline the long introductory phrase. Okay, now, if we have a short one, we don't need it. So let's go ahead and down here, we'll write not necessary after short ones. Okay, so here's an example. In the winter, people play outside when it is not too cold. Okay, so here's our introductory element is in the winter, but we don't need to put a comma here. It would be kind of awkward if we did. In the winter, people play outside when it's not too cold. It makes sense. It just flows better that way without a comma. If we said in the winter, people play outside when it's not too cold, that's a little bit dramatic, not necessary. Okay, so the practice for today's lesson is not going to be on IXL. And the reason for that is that the IXL practice doesn't break these two concepts down. And so you're going to be seeing these within IXL, but not until after the next lesson. So in order to practice this lesson, here's what I would like you to do. And if once I'm done reading this, go ahead and pause the video so that you can write this down. So I'd like you to write 5 sentences using direct address and 5 sentences using introductory phrases or clauses. So as far as your subjects or your topics for this, I would like you to use your current history or English reading and lessons as your subjects. That does not mean I want you to go digging through them and finding sentences that have introductory phrases or nouns of direct address. I just want you to say, okay, well, see, I'm learning about the Constitution right now, so maybe I will write a sentence where somebody, like 2 of the creators of the Constitution are talking to each other, and that'll be one of my sentences with noun of direct address. Or maybe I'll write a sentence where I'm describing what it was like when they wrote the Constitution, and so that I will include an introductory phrase in that sentence. Or you can pull in talking about the characters in a novel that you're reading. But use content from something else that you're currently learning as your subjects. After you write your sentences, go back, circle your commas in green, and underline your direct address noun and your introductory elements also in green, just like we did in the examples. So the next lesson this was a brief lesson. The next lesson is also brief. The next lesson is going to be learning about interjections and interruptions. So comma uses with that. And then after that, the IXL path is going to do a nice blend of today's practice and the next practice. So if you have time, this was a brief lesson. And if you have time after you write your 5 sentences, your 10 total sentences, which I don't think you will, and you want to, go ahead and start the next lesson today, that will be just fine. Good job, everybody.